Hello you beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. As always, I hope this video finds you well and still enjoying your hobbies, whatever they may be. So the subject of today's video is the Airbus A340 by Revell in 1:144 scale. This is the original boxing and not the newly released boxing that appeared earlier this year. I was keen to get hold of the original boxing because sadly in their re-release, Revell in their infinite wisdom decided not to re-release it with this gorgeous colour scheme. And as you can see, this came out in 2007, so what are we now, 24 years moving on, 23, 24 years moving on, so this is quite a hard kit to get hold of, so I was very pleased that the prices had come down on various auction sites, should we say, and I managed to get this at a more reasonable price. So we won't hang around, and without further ado, it's on to the kit. So first order of getting sorted are the cabin windows. So to fill these in, I use a 2-part epoxy putty, milliput to be precise, because I find this does the job really well. It doesn't shrink, and when it dries it literally goes like concrete. So it's just a case of making a putty noodle and then methodically working along, as you can see what I'm doing now. Make sure all the windows are covered, and then we're applying a moderate bit of pressure just to push the putty through the gaps where the windows are. I don't know why Revell, I think Airfix did this as well, went through this phase of just leaving these as holes. Some sort of had ones where you could fill them with clear plastic to make it sort of simulate windows, but I've never been a fan. I've always found it better to use this method for me personally, where I push the putty through the windows, let it dry, and as you see we will sand it back and we'll get a nice smooth finish to allow for the cabin windows to be deckled. So here we go, the strange effect there, all the putty has been pushed all the way through the windows. So now we will set this to one side to dry for a couple of days and to go hard. So whilst we're letting that happen, we move swiftly onto the wings. So this is using Tamiya's excellent quick drying cement, and it's just a case of applying, using the brush on the end of the stick there, to the leading edge of the surface of the leading edge. Get my words right. Push the two parts together, and as you can see you get a nice beading effect where the plastic weld basically welds the two bits of plastic together. It does exactly as it says on the tin. We like to get that bead because once that bead dries, it basically forms a solid sort of plug of plastic between the two halves. So when we sand it back and get it all nice and smooth, there's no gaps, no holes or indentations or anything like that. It is really the desired effect that we're looking for. So with the wings done, we move again quickly onto the main gear of the aircraft, the undercarriage. This is the nose wheel, and then one of the main wheels from one of the wings. Quite astonishing really, the level of detail they got on this, well, what is a bit of a venerable kit now. So the colour selected for this was Mr. Hobby number 8 silver. I've got these crocodile clips, I'm just sort of showing a quick peek there. I got these crocodile clips quite recently, and I will be honest with you, I'm sure you guys all use them, but I don't know what I did without them beforehand. I think they're absolutely excellent for doing jobs such as this. They're really, really good, and I'm a bit annoyed with myself I didn't get them sooner. So we go, silver has been applied. I also, before I sprayed this, made sure there was no seam lines, because again, these older kits, unfortunately, they do have a seam line where the sprues are made and the dies are pressed together, you get a bit of a seam line. So as I quick peek there, I showed you I had to do all the rest of the main landing gear pieces, which are quite extensive. Moving swiftly on, panel line accent colour by Tamiya. There's a grey one and a black one. I've never used this stuff before, as I'm sure you guys probably have, but if you haven't, for the newer people, I'm just going to do a sort of little mini how-to with this, just to show you what I did and how I got on with it. I think it's really good. So just using our good old friend Mr. Capillary Action, it's just a case of liberally applying the panel line colour. As you can see, I've got some on the actual main wing there, but it really isn't a problem because it can be removed using a cotton bud or a Q-tip, as you Americans call it, to remove all the excess. And as you can see, it brings out the details, which again are very excellent for such a venerable kit. It brings the details out really, really well. So we dab it on quite liberally to start with, but we know we can remove the excess, which is what I do now. Just dab away the excess, actually using the brush from the pot. As you can see, it all disappears nicely. And of course I mopped a bit up off the wing using a cotton bud. I used a mixture of grey and black, because sometimes black can be a little bit stark, so the dark grey was a little bit less aggressive, but still brought out the details nicely. So next up are the main gears, and this is to give them a bit of a used look. Obviously when they come out of the factory they look nice and fresh, but after a few takeoffs and landings they do get very grubby. Brake dust, etc. gets all over them. So this was the sort of look that I was looking to simulate and to show. So just speed this bit up for you. And then using Mr. Q-tip or Mr. Cotton Bud, just dab off the excess, and it just gives it that sort of not pristine look, and also brings out the detail as well, which is what we want really at the end of the day. So to compare this with one that hasn't been done, there you go, you can see one looks nice and detailed and used, the other one looks almost fake, should we say, for want of a better phrase, of course. So the next point of this build is to do the engines. Now the engines that come with the kit are notoriously inaccurate, and I will show you the inaccuracies as we move forward through the build. There's a new company, I think they're called Lachi, I don't know. They come from the UK, and he makes resin 3D printed engines for various aircraft, civil airliners, and I think he does slats and flaps and ailerons as well. And this one was particular for the Revell kit. So I thought, well, as it's accurate and I want to sort of give this the love and due attention this kit deserves, I bought a set. They were very reasonably priced. I'm not in any way sponsored by this guy. I don't even know him. I'm just passing on what I did to you guys, and I found this particularly useful. Comes with a really simple guide of how to construct your engines, and as you can see, it really is simple. If I can do it, trust me, you guys can. I was particularly blown away because I still haven't got my head around this whole 3D printing and the level of detail you can get with it. I know it's been out a few years now, but it still continues to amaze me. And as you can see there, even the fan blades are individual there. Excellent. Shall we compare them to the ones that were with the original? There we go. So there's the original kit ones. And it is a little unfair to compare them really, because look at that. Much, much better. So I'm going to take my time to just sort of go through the process of what I did with these engines, just for any of you people out there that are maybe new to the hobby and aren't familiar with how to handle 3D printed and resin kit extras and aftermarket parts. So these are the original ones, and what I'm pointing out is the fact that the one on the right hand side there has the correct pylon for the engine to sit on, and this one here is incorrect, and this is for the inner engines, and I've just lobbed that away because it's so inaccurate. You can see it's meant that the pylon itself is a lot slimmer, and what that effectively did with the original ones was make the engine far too close to your floor, so it just looked weird. As you can see, there's some beautiful detail, really rather impressive, to be honest with you. And there we go, just for comparison's sake, there is the original and there is the better one above. As you can see, the lower one, the pylon's just too thick and chunky. I don't know what Revell were thinking of there. Really scored an own goal with that one, sadly. The detail again being shown here. Even the rakes along the forward engines have been printed absolutely superbly. So as I'm keen to show you here, when they're 3D printed, they're sort of built in onto a framework, and obviously we need to remove that framework. So the tools for that are my nippers, scalpel, and tweezers. I didn't end up using all of these. I don't know why I've put the paint dropper there. I have no idea. You don't need that. So I'll just zoom it in a little bit so you get a closer view of what I'm getting up to. It's really a simple process. For those of you that are well versed with this, I do apologise that you have to go through this rigmarole. But for the newbies and the and alike, like myself, I thought this might be useful. So it's just a case of nipping the framework away from the engine. It's really brittle, so do be careful with this. With this you can be a bit bullish with it, it's not a problem, but for things like the engine fans, the turbo fans that are on there, you've got to be really properly careful because they're very fragile and want to break. I fortunately didn't break any, but yeah, one to be careful of. So moving on, I've painted the engine fan in a titanium colour. And here I'm just showing you that you can't get this wrong. It will only fit one way, and you've got the recesses just to help you, so it's foolproof. So of note, obviously only super glue works with resin. You can't use your Tamiya extra thin cement because it doesn't have the welding action. So I just used any old super glue that I had to hand. I could do with getting some more with more of a thin applicator, to be totally honest with you. As you can see, it just fits in one way and one way only. Using the tweezers, just get it into the right spot, and then applying some more super glue and marrying or mating the joints together. So this is where I realised I'd boo-booed slightly. Yes, I do boo-boo. So I'd sanded off and made smooth the two mating surfaces, but in my haste, excitement, lack of attention, I don't know, you can see I've clearly rounded the edges there, and I was super cross with myself over that because it is a properly amateur thing to do that. So that sort of opened up a whole can of worms where I've now actually got to fill the crevice, the chasm. I mean, you could fly a flipping Star Wars fighter through that. You know, it's really bad. Or you could drive a double-decker bus through it if you live in England. So I'm sort of evaluating here. But the super glue's finally set to. As you can see, one engine has been constructed, in inverted commas, and I think I'm questioning the meaning of life here as to my stupidity, and I'm now realising that I am going to have to fill that chasm. So fill the chasm I did and do. For this, I'm going to be using Deluxe Materials putty. There we go, perfect plastic putty. This stuff is excellent. You can, of course, use your two-part epoxy or milliput or whatever your favourite is. I use this this stuff because I find it's just a little bit easier to work with. It's a little bit less aggressive. It's water based as well, and I just find it gives me a little bit more time to play around, and I just find it generally easier. But to each their own, as they say. So using my well used spatula or putty knife, I suppose we should be a bit more technical with these things. I liberally, like icing a cake, I liberally apply said putty. Now you'll notice I've used Tamiya masking tape around the sides there. That is just to localise where the putty goes, so I don't spend hours and hours having to rescribe and get all the detail from the engine back because I filled the lines with putty. Now this is the way I do it with the putty. I do use sort of my hand to flick a bit of the excess off. Some people are probably going, oh my god, no, you can't do that, what are you doing? Listen, it works for me, okay? And then using a cotton bud or Q-tip for our American viewers, it's just a case of using a damp Q-tip, cotton bud, however you want to say it, to remove the putty. And we like to do this before it gets dry because it is a hell of a lot easier to do so, and it's neater and tidier as well. So just moving across and making sure that the area is filled correctly and that we're happy. Now sometimes this can shrink, not going to lie, it can shrink, and you have to just do this whole process again just to make sure, but usually once, maybe twice, and then you'll find that you have a nice level smooth area like so. So time to clear off that masking tape. As you can see, it saved me a whole lot of headaches with putty not being where it shouldn't be for the majority. So now we're just left up with a minimal bit of tidy up, and as you can see, some of the recessed lines there and the panel lines have been filled, but because it's still slightly moist, we can use the Q-tip to great effect to just clear off any of the excess. Using the wet side and the dry side, don't have to be too precious with it, and it comes up perfect. Now you guys may have a different way of doing this, and I'd love to hear from you if you do. Please do feel free to comment and let me know. So if there is a better way, or I'm doing it wrong, or is a more efficient way of doing this, please do let me know, because that's the joys of this hobby and this sort of forum where we can talk with each other and help each other. And if you are a subscriber, I'd like to say thank you very much whilst we're watching me do this. If you're not a subscriber, please do me the honour of subscribing, please. It helps the algorithms and it just helps get my channel out there a little bit more. And with that, I should probably get my backside into order and release some more videos. Yes, I know, I've been a bit slack with that. Okay, so the nose gear bay is the next subject of our attention. And again, I've shown this because just the incredible amount of detail for a part that really you can't see. I'm just getting the main retractor leg put into position. And of course I'll knock it back straight off again, so it's the usual curse. So we'll wiggle that into position and apply again some Tamiya extra thin cement like so. And as you can see, this is had all the panel line accent put in, and it shows up all the details beautifully. But sadly with this kit, most of the detail is lost because the nose gear doors are closed when the aircraft's on the ground, so you can't see into there anyway. Cracking detail. Happy with that. So we move swiftly on again. The nose wheel bay is now in situ in place, and I have taken the liberty to spare you the anguish of some parts of this build. I basically used Tamiya's, again, extra thin cement to secure the bottom half of the fuselage, and now it's time to move to the top half of it and getting the fuselage halves together. Now, this being an older kit, it did fight me a little bit. This isn't to say that this kit is a rotter, because it's really not, and it's not to say that this kit is for advanced people only, because again, it's really not. It's just a case of, even if you're a newbie, don't be put off by this. Just be methodical. You know, what I'm showing you is how I do it. I'm not saying it's the way, but if you find this useful, then give it a go. That's what I always say about kits, whether they're expensive, cheap, whatever. They're going to look a heck of a lot better when you've given them a go to build them than they are just stashed away in your build. And I know that's sacrilege to some people who like to collect boxes of kits. I've still not quite got my head around that, but I'm sure most people are sitting here now rapidly unsubscribing. But I just think kits should be built. And if you've got one on the shelf that you're sitting there thinking, oh, I'm not sure I'm quite good enough to do this, give it a go. It's not going to build itself, and we're all learning, and we all do learn sometimes on kits that are maybe expensive and we wish we had them, but that's all just part of the fun of the hobby. So getting the halves together here, again getting a nice bead line between the halves so that later on we can sand them smooth and it doesn't show up. So that's the two substantial halves. I'm sorry I can't show you the whole fuselage in one view here, but the actual length of this aircraft is actually really quite substantial, so I am not able to with my camera setup. They even put in a cockpit. It's amazing. You're not going to see it, but it's there. Cool. Halves together. Okay, now the halves are together. You can see it again. I've liberally put some masking tape on the side of the aircraft, and this is because I'm going to sand the windows smooth. Okay, now to do this I used my Christmas present from my son, God bless him. He got me the equivalent of a Dremel, so a rotary tool we'll call it, and I used this rotary tool to sand down these little nubs of concrete basically. Now guys, if you're going to do this, you have got to be super crazy careful with this, because if you actually get this rotary tool into the plastic, take it from me, it goes through it like a hot knife through butter. Okay, so do take your time, be methodical with it, but this does save a lot of time. And one thing I will also say is, whilst you are doing this, you can't see me, but I am wearing a respirator mask for that. Okay, you do not want to get this stuff into your lungs. Okay, I'm not sure on the putty if it's harmful or not, but you know what, I wasn't going to take that risk. So with the majority of the blisters, we'll call them, of the windows dealt with, it was then using various grades of sanding sticks to do the rest, because I didn't want to get too close to the plastic with the rotary tool, because it will dent it, melt it, and cause all sorts of problems. So this is then now the more controlled stage, and going from a coarse grit and slowly working through to smoother and smoother grits until we basically smooth this completely away and it is all smooth like the original plastic that was there. This will take some time, I cannot lie, but it is very rewarding once it's done. And again, we've got the masking tape round here so we don't sand away too many of the details, like the panel lines, doors, etc, etc. In fact, I've covered all the doors. What I'm doing here, I'm just using my fingernail just to, for sort of, instead of the Mark 1 eyeball, just to make sure that there's no indentations and bits that I'm not happy with. I also check in light as well, just to make sure. What I find just running my finger along, especially a fingernail, just to make sure, is quite a useful way of doing it. And here I'm using a very, very smooth coarse, very smooth grit of sanding stick, just for the final process to get it all nice and shiny. Okay, with that all done and completed, as some of the sharper-eyed people will see here, I've got the main underbelly bit done in the centre where the centre gear goes. Little tip for everybody, you're actually meant to put that bit in when you're putting the fuselage halves together, but shh, don't tell anyone, because I didn't do that and I had a right pain in the arse trying to get that in, but I got it in eventually. Okay, so next up it's the wings, that again are quite substantial on this aircraft. So using the quick drying cements, it's just a case of getting these in situ, making sure there's no gaps. Now before I actually put these for final gluing, I sort of held them up to the aircraft and sanded away any bits and bobs that were just sort of not making it meet super flush to the fuselage. So do make sure you do that and just be happy that the surfaces mate together really well with no gaps. It will just save you a lot of headaches later on. So just methodically working through there to get that wing on. Now wings are done, and again, the sharper-eyed of you will notice that I've changed to a white base for my table because the camera was struggling to pick up the details on this video, and I've also primed the whole kit. Now I have slightly cheated with the priming here, and again this may raise some eyebrows, but I actually went to Halfords and got some primer, rattle can primer. I know, shock horror, and I'll tell you for why. Because for airliner kits, and not necessarily military kits, it's great. The coverage is awesome, okay? And it saves me a lot of cleaning up and mess tidying up. Anyway, so what I'm doing here, I'm rambling on. I've actually got some electrician's tape and popped it on the top of the fuselage where the seam lines, the panel lines, not the seam lines, the panel lines have been lost due to my sanding. So I placed that very carefully, taking my time in the correct position and using Tamiya's scribing tool. You can see what I'm doing there, just running it along very, very gently. No pressure here, please, because if you slip, you've got a horrendous amount of sanding to do, and I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. So as you can see, I've got rid of the seam line totally, so the fuselage is all nice and smooth, but I have lost, or had lost, the panel line, and now I've put that back in situ. Really, really happy with that. Happy days. And we just got to now do that across the whole fuselage where I've sanded it away. This is a time consuming but I find very rewarding thing to do, because when you go to then spray the rest of the aircraft and then you do a bit of sort of panel lining later on with your accent panel liner, etc, etc, it doesn't half look good. So as I'm pointing out here, just a case of moving on, do all the other panel lines, top and bottom, and all will be good. Okay, wings done, panel lines all done and rescribed. What's next? Aha, okay, it's time to attach our beautiful new engines. Some of you will have already noticed, and if you have, I'll tell you what, you get a cookie for this, because you can't actually see it on the wing, is you'll notice there's holes there for the inner engines, but the outboards ones, Revell in their instant wisdom decided they wouldn't make the holes. Yay, go Revell! So that was down to me to do. So as you can see here, as Blue Peter would say, here's one I made earlier. But how did I do this, I hear you scream? How were you accurate? What did you do? Well, all will be revealed. So, using some black paint. Now you don't have to use black, you can use any dark colour you like, or even a white if you want. I've got an old paintbrush. I nearly said toothbrush then. I've got an old paintbrush and you'll see what I did. Don't use the dry end like me where nothing happens, especially when you're on video. Dull. Tell you what, mate, why don't you just get it how you want it. There we go. So we mark where the pylon attachment pins are. Now I'd already done an awful, and I mean a heck of a lot of research into making sure that I was putting this into the right place. Okay, because I didn't want to get it wrong. there's no point getting extra, you know, brand new engines that are all accurate and then not accurately placing them. So I double checked where they go, and they go between these two flaps here. So basically it's just a case of lining it up without those 2 points touching the wing, just making sure the rear of that part of the engine, it's meant to line up with the rear, with the trailing part of the with the wing. And then you line that up and then dab those 2 bits on like so, and voila, you have 2 black spots that you then drill holes into like so. And it really is as easy as that. Just take your time, check, double check, triple check, make sure everything's all right, and then you will be grand. And as you can see, this has all come together really well. The engine's in place, and it's just now a case of popping the easier ones, which have already got the holes in the wings for, into place. And again, using super glue for this. I'm not going to keep you much longer now, everybody. You've got about 1.5 minutes to go. So if you've got this far, I cannot thank you enough. You long-suffering people, really appreciate it. I know I've said it once already, but I do. I appreciate it, and I appreciate everyone reaching out to me when I do release a video. And if you haven't already, I please humbly ask you to like and subscribe, switch your notifications on, and that would be I'd be blown away if you could, please. Thank you. So as you can see here, I filled the engines. I actually got a sponge from the kitchen and just, you know, chopped it up and stuffed the engine holes with that, and it works out beautifully. So it's now down to starting to paint the wait, what? Why have I cut that off? Oh, yes, that's right. Because I used the wrong colour, the wrong blue. The correct blue is 323 light blue. So, as you can see here, we do make mistakes. So, I found this blue a little bit too minty, the truth be known. So, I patiently waited for some different colours to turn up. This colour turned up, and I'm now much happy with it. It's less minty blue. It's the correct blue for the engines. And then we just carried on. Now, unfortunately, the camera doesn't massively pick up the difference. But trust me, there is a difference. Okay, now I'm going to leave this as a teaser for you. The next episode is going to be all the painting and the decals and the finished model. Okay, you are going to have to wait for that. Okay, because as of recording, I haven't actually finished it yet. Thank you for watching this far. We've got about 14 seconds to go, so I'm going to say thank you again. Please hit the like and subscribe, and I look forward to speaking with you for the next video. Have a good one, people.